Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm ABC 10 meteorologist Brendan Minchef. On this week's Climate Conversations, we take a look at floodplain restoration, river restoration, and kind of the opposite of those concrete water infrastructure. What do we do about our natural water infrastructure? Well, to talk about that, I brought in Julie Rentner, president of River Partners. Here's our conversation. On the program today, I am joined by Julie Rentner, the president of River Partners. Julie, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let me ask you this question first. What is River Partners?
So River Partners is a not-for-profit organization. Our mission is to create wildlife habitat that benefits people and the environment. So for 25 years, River Partners has been giving new life to river systems, mostly in the Central Valley, where we have very large rivers, our largest rivers in California, but also in Southern California. And because our mission is to both create wildlife habitat and to benefit people and the environment, our work tends to both provide habitat for dwindling wildlife populations, while it also improves our water resilience and water supply, our water quality, and flood risk reduction for communities.
And I mean, maybe this is a little broad or naive, but why is this so important, right? River restoration and work. I mean, we seem to invest so much in reservoirs and kind of, concrete infrastructure, if you will, but why natural, river infrastructure?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. So it turns out that in California, where we've seen the development of an incredible economy, an incredible population in a very short amount of time, really, when you think about it. From the time California became a state till today, 40 million people and almost $4 trillion in annual budget. I mean, this is an enormous state, an enormous economy. All of it is driven by water, right? Humans need water, but our industries need water. We have one of the most complicated water delivery systems ever created by humanity as well. And what that's done, all the reservoirs and all of the big concrete lined, canals and aqueducts and all of the facilities that we have supplied fresh water to this growing economy and this growing population in really reliable ways. But it's also created some environmental hazards and crises for the watersheds where all of that water comes from. So what this translates into is kind of regulatory conflict and challenges, especially as our climate continues to change, around how we're going to have safe and reliable water for people to drink, safe communities from flood risk, and wildlife populations that aren't going extinct. So when you pile all those things up together, it turns out that rivers are kind of the heart of both keeping our water supplies reliable, but also keeping California living and thriving and vibrant for generations to come.
And one of your recent projects that was just completed, Dos Rios, that you see in the monitors here behind us, the Dos Rios River Project, now California's newest state park, the first state park since 2014. It was just the ribbon cutting on Earth Day, if you will. But Dos Rios was a 10-year, $40 million project with funding from 11 different sources, both public and private. And really, this was River Partners' baby for a long time, right? This is one of your biggest projects just completed.
Yeah, we call this a flagship project, and quite frankly, it's just a jewel. So if you look at it on a map, the Dos Rios Ranch State Park is like this heart in the center of our water system. It's at this location right where the San Joaquin River and its largest tributary, the Tuolumne, come together. It's got 8 miles of river frontage on those two rivers, as well as a 1,600-acre floodplain, which has been restored. So this image that we're looking at behind us is an image of the restored floodplain at Dos Rios Ranch State Park. We were fortunate to buy this property with public funds back in 2012, thinking it would be lovely if one day this was part of a wildlife refuge, a park, a regional park, a state park, who knows what. And it was very exciting to engage with the administration and with California State Parks over the last few years to turn this baby, this restoration project, enormous restoration project, into a state park that everybody in California can enjoy.
And floodplain restoration, an important piece of this because, as the name suggests, maybe it helps to prevent flooding in urban areas, but also we can do a little bit of groundwater recharge on that as well, and groundwater, kind of the new frontier of water storage and management here in California.
And you mentioned 2014. Since 2014, when we passed the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, this has been the name of the game in the San Joaquin Valley, is how do we take what we would call nuisance floodwater that risks the lives and property of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Californians, and turn it into a resource by storing it back in the ground. So it turns out we can put almost 10 times as much water underground as we can in surface storage reservoirs in California. That's just the way that our aquifers and our groundwater system looks. And the capacity to store water and use it during the dry times in our subsurface has been under studied. We don't know much about it, and not as much as we need to. And also it's been overused. And so the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act really put guide rails around groundwater use to say, hey, look, we need to treat this as part of our watershed as well. Turns out that to get water to sink into the ground, it's pretty simple. What you need is sandy, gravelly places where you spread that water out, let it sink in, get deep, deep underground. Then when we need to in the dry times, when we have dry years or successive dry years, we have groundwater wells that can pull that water back out and use it. So our river corridors and our floodplains happen to be the place where we can get likely the fastest and the most water, the biggest gulps of water to get down into our storage beneath our feet. The reason is because river channels are usually places where material that's eroded off the Sierras, sands and gravels, tends to accumulate in river channels and on alluvial floodplains. And those are, over time, the channels that actually draw water down into the ground. So when we look at water spreading across the floodplain, like at Dos Rios State Park, we see tens of thousands of acre feet of water sinking down into the ground in places where people will be able to use it later. On the flip side of the hydrograph, it's a place where that water surface elevation that's heading towards communities like Modesto and Stockton and Lathrop and Manteca. This is a place where we can spread water out during peak flood stage and actually reduces the water surface elevation those communities feel. So those communities downstream of Dos Rios Ranch State Park are protected from flooding by giant earthen levees. And we all know levees have a chance of breaking every time there's high water. It's a real risky situation to be protecting so many Californians with just those levees. So places upstream where we can actually, reasonably and affordably set back that river channel, get that water to spread out and sink in where it can be a benefit and not a nuisance. Benefits not just the local community right there by the project, but also downstream for sometimes dozens of miles.
Now, before we move on from this topic, I do want to ask, how have the last couple of winters, with all of the water and the runoff and, the historically wet winter, especially last year, did Dos Rios see any benefit from that? Maybe it's too early to pull some numbers, but...
Definitely did, yeah. So we know last year was a pretty amazing snowpack year. So much water fell on California as snow, which was a big deal because our climate models are projecting that that's going to shift. And into the next few decades, we're going to see a lot less snow and a lot more rain when we have big storms in California, which has big implications for flood discharge and for water surface elevations, making floodplains even more important. But last year, we saw, I think all of our imaginations were captured by the reemergence of the Tulare Lake, something that we haven't seen since the 80s in California. Wow. It was a time when we saw, somewhere between $1 and $2 billion worth of property damages associated with flooding as well. The state just released a groundwater recharge report. How much of that extra water did we actually get into the ground last year? And it was something like 8.7 million acre feet of water got back into the ground last year in that historic water year. I'm delighted to report at least half of that came from natural recharge, just like this. Came from places where people aren't really pumping and pulling it out, but it's just water had places to spread out where it's not held at the surface by clay layers. It's able to find its way down into deeper percolation and get stored there for later use. That's a huge amount of water, 4 million acre feet.
Which is more than what we could fit in somewhere like Shasta, certainly more than somewhere like Folsom. That's a lot of water that got put underground. It's a lot
of water. And I haven't run the numbers, I'm no economist, but when you calculate out just how much that water and that storage is worth to California, the price tag of a project like Dos Rios at $40 million it's peanuts. Really is one of the cheapest ways we can store water in California by reconnecting our floodplains in appropriate places.
Now, I do want to ask, too, because you were at Dos Rios for the dedication. So was Governor Newsom, the first partner, other state officials. They were all there. And at that dedication, the governor unveiled a new California climate commitment dubbed World Leading with 81 targets for nature-based climate solutions. How does River Partner, briefly, what is the California Climate Commitment and how can River Partners play into that?
Yeah, I mean, if you zoom way out, California Climate Commitment really says by 2045, we want to turn about half of our state into a carbon sink. It's huge.
What is a carbon
really
sink?
big thing to say. So what that means is instead of the land being a net emitter of carbon into our atmosphere, whether that's episodically when a forest burns, or regularly when we till soil and the organic matter decomposes and it puts carbon back into the atmosphere. Instead, let's transition lots of acres of our state, half of our state, into the type of management that can actually pull carbon out of the air, whether that's forests, like we've done at Dos Rios Ranch, where we've created new forests where they were once cleared, which can soak up more carbon than almost any other vegetation type in California, or doing fuels treatments in the Sierras that keep the forest fires from getting out of control and burning and releasing so much carbon in the atmosphere that, you know, a decade of conservation work doesn't matter anymore. It turns out that when we make our landscape a little more wet like this with floodwaters, or, you know, welcome a little bit more snowpack into the Sierras, coupled with vegetation management that actually sucks carbon back into the ground, we get this twofer in terms of climate resilience. So we're actually cleaning the air, pulling carbon out of the air, but we're also purifying our water system, getting more water into the ground for storage. So by 2045, getting half of the state functioning in this way, where it's kind of absorbing water and carbon, means California's economy, its population, and its ecology is going to be healthy for generations. It's a huge commitment. It is definitely world-leading commitment. California has some amazing natural resources leadership, really thinking about how do we get California and its huge population and its huge economy being a world leader, you know, showing us all how the future of watershed management can really look. It's inclusive. It's holistic, right? It's thinking about all of the different ways that we derive our food and our fiber, our communities and our recreation and our, you know, appreciating aesthetic values and cultural histories all in one spot. So I am super excited about the new state park and its dedication with the governor for many reasons, but one of them being that the park is this showcase where we can actually share these water stories with all the visitors who come to Dos Rios Ranch State Park. I'm hopeful that folks, when they visit the park, will get a chance to think about, what does this place look like when it's underwater? And what does it look like when it's really dry? They're very different times in California. And that will help to open our you know, collective understanding about this complicated water system that we live in, and hopefully remove us from all of the water wars and water conflicts that we've been struggling with for a few generations, and move us into a future where we're working collectively to improve our system as a whole.
And I think that's an important point you brought up too, is that I don't want to overlook, is that Dos Rios is not just a floodplain or a forest that it's, you know, untouched. It's recreational too. You can go down there, have a good time, visit. It's not just a piece of land that we don't use.
Yeah, I mean, as our climate continues to get a little bit warmer and a little bit warmer, having places where there's shade, where there's water, there's a little breeze coming off the top of the water, this becomes critically important in the Central Valley, where those temperatures are just going up and up. I mean, this summer, we're expecting to see some weeks of really high temperatures in the valley, and having a place where you can bring your kids for a walk in the shade of a forest with some wind blowing off the top of the river, that sounds like a walk I want to take. Yeah.
And being in Sacramento, I don't think any of us are any strangers to knowing how much trees in the shade can really help keep things cooler. What are some other projects that River Partners is working on right now?
Yeah. So Dos Rios Ranch is just one piece in a much larger, it's about a 5,000 acre complex of restored floodplains right there on the San Joaquin River. That's just one of about 6 hubs of work that we're working on across the Central Valley in Southern California. We've got projects as far south as Holtville down in the Imperial Valley, all the way up to near Redding on the Sacramento River. Some of the largest ones that I'm most excited about are in the hundreds of thousands of acres in size, and they do exactly what Dos Rios Ranch does, is they take advantage of areas where it's common to have overbank flooding, or where we have levees and infrastructure that's been failing because it's been damaged over time by a lot of high water or fluctuating water situations, where we can relatively easily and cost effectively make that water spread out further. We just about 2 weeks ago. Closed escrow on a property down in Merced County, right kind of at the bottom of Bear Creek where it hits the San Joaquin River, where we have a tremendous opportunity to not just reconnect some floodplain and provide some improved habitat for wildlife, but also work with kind of the tailwater of irrigation delivery systems to make sure that the water that's coming off of our neighbors upslope has a place to kind of percolate through sandy soils, clean up the water quality a little bit. And then we'll also be able to provide some habitat for things like monarch butterflies, other critters that are on the brink of extinction.
This work is not cheap, right? No. Land is expensive. Working the land, turning it back into restoring it, essentially, is expensive. And you've recently gotten some funding from a couple of big names, among others. Google has given some money for floodplain restoration. Apple has also given money for floodplain restoration in the Sacramento Valley. They didn't say exactly how much went to each different partner, but they did say $8 million in total as part of their green initiative has been given out for water funding. So you've worked with Google and Apple and are still working with them right now, right?
We've worked with both of them and a few others, Brendan, and this is a really exciting time for public-private partnerships and water resources development. So because of what we call them in this space is co-benefits, because of the co-benefits of this kind of project, where we're not just improving water stewardship by creating a little bit more space in a reservoir or fixing a bit of a canal bank, that allows us to deliver more water. We are creating parks and open space, wildlife habitat areas, places where our Native American partners can come and gather and collect materials for their art. All of these co-benefits, the flood safety benefits, the water storage benefits, add up to a lot more than just a single investment in one component of the water system. It's expensive to get it done. California has some amazing programs, and we've been fortunate to be able to piece them together. Take a small investment from a flood program, add it to a small investment from a water supply program, add it to a small investment from a wildlife program to get to the scale that it takes to do a project of this magnitude. But there's always going to be expenses that just aren't borne by public programs. I mean, public programs just don't pay for everything about doing a project like this. So bringing in partners from the corporate sector is something that I think we've all in the water world been thinking about for a long time, but we're finally at the moment where it's time to launch, where the projects are ready, the outcomes have been studied enough, and we can say reliably that when an Apple or a Google invests this money in a project here, they're not just getting a water stewardship outcome that's commensurate with their own water use in that watershed or in that space or in this region, but also incentivizing and investing in a whole bunch of co-benefits, which makes us proud, it makes the corporation proud, it makes our public funding partners and programs proud as well. So we're really in a space of growth. When I think about the future, River Partners alone is looking at something between 50,000 and 60,000 acres of projects like this over the next decade or decade and a half. That's not going to be cheap. But when we think about the scale that we can get investment from federal partners, state partners, local partners, corporate partners all coming together, I think it's doable, and that's really exciting. So thinking about a future in California where our water supplies are more reliable and our communities are safer, stimulated by both public programs, the taxpayer, and corporations, the users of a lot of water, this is a bright future for us all.
What's the biggest challenge going forward for River Partners? I mean, the state is investing billions of dollars in other water projects and the Delta Tunnel, for instance, but for you guys, it does sound like maybe funding has been a challenge. But what is the biggest challenge going forward?
Yeah, I think we can't grow as fast as we like to. There's a lot of need out there, and growth is challenging. It's not just a dollars thing, but it's this is a new and growing sector. I mean, we only started talking about multi-benefit floodplain restoration and the promise that it has for California in the last 10 or 15 years. It's not like there's folks graduating with a PhD in multi-benefit floodplain project development right now, growing our space, River Partners, when it comes to installing projects like this, we have a really nice built-in scalable model of we hire folks locally from the community right next to where the project is, and we use agricultural practices largely so that we can take advantage of whoever has resources in the area, labor crews or tractors or whatever it takes to get the job done, nurseries to grow the plants. But when it comes to design and permitting and all of the administration of pulling together all those funding partners I just talked about, that stuff, those are skills that just, aren't off the shelf. And so we have a small but mighty team here at River Partners. We have a larger but mighty team of this community of people who've been working in multi-benefit floodplain restoration. That community, that larger community, are both people that work at other conservation nonprofits like us who are scaling like crazy, just trying to wrap our arms around this, as well as people who work in leadership and in the rank and file of all of our state and federal agencies. So it's growing, but it takes time. I think some of our biggest obstacles really are the people, the knowledge, the experience.
And if folks want to get involved, maybe someone watching this is interested in River Partners and floodplain restoration, can other folks get involved?
Absolutely. I mean, so River Partners, I didn't say this at the top, but we were founded with the name River Partners on purpose, right? The partners part really illustrates not just that the problem is big and it's going to take a lot of us to get it done, but that the problem is diverse and the solution is inclusive. People need to be here to help. So yes, if you want to learn how to help, go to riverpartners.org. You can read a lot about this work. You can see different ways to contribute, whether it's donations, whether it's time, whether it's introductions to folks that you know who would like to participate and help. All of it is on the table and our doors are wide open. Really eager to see how we can not just grow the work of River Partners, but empower others to do more just like it.
Julie, always fantastic talk. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Brendan. Appreciate it.